Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I want to talk about our KvK and Kingsland fight versus 1365, because if you had told me that this Kingsland was going to last less than 12 hours, I would have been very surprised. But here we are. The way this ultimately worked out is that 2377, who has been on a insane win spree, battled against 1365. They are the strongest Imperium kingdom in the game by power. And they battled for the sort of left corner of the map. We battled for the upper right corner of the map. That's my kingdom 2293, our allies 2934 versus 3310 and 1718. And for the most part, things were pretty much a stalemate in this upper portion of the map. We were gaining ground toward this pass, which very obviously the strategy was sweep the outside, take the pass, win the KvK. But they were taking the area by the zig. So we were gaining ground one way, but losing it another. So we were arguably kind of stalemated with our opponent. The A seed kingdoms were stalemated. Only after 2377 was burning 1365 pretty much everywhere, and they had kind of left the field, did they then swing up to our side of the field, and at that point it was big GG's. Literally, there was a flag over here where I'm like, man, I want to swarm this flag. I need field, but like our field is busy doing something important, and then 2377 rolls up. I'm like, oh, I do some hello emojis. They swing on over to my position. I swarm the flag, and I'm like, thank you, and then they go on their way. Because ultimately taking this pass was the right strategy. And in order to finally take this pass, we did sort of a hilarious thing. We had 2377 take this one over here. They random ported into the zone, okay, and then killed all the people standing by the pass on this side and controlled the field, and that's how we ultimately got this pass. Hilarious. That's how it goes, man. So all in all, this KvK was very fun, but people may have noticed I had an extremely aggressive flag swarming playstyle where, as I may have already mentioned in this video, I had number 7 on the dead troop leaderboard when Kingsland sort of peaked, okay? And once things sort of tapered off, like, all right, like it's already over at that point. And there's still some dead troops to be had, but I shifted my focus to getting those onto my restart account. So what was my strategy this Kingsland, and why was it so different? And it was because of the stratagem system. So we are in the King of all Britain KvK format. You get these things called stratagems, okay? Stratagems are very, very critical in shaping the way that your armies perform. If you did not optimize your stratagems, you got cooked. You needed to optimize either for open field, for rally garrison, or, as I did, swarming stuff like crazy. There's even a way to optimize for being a filler. I will make a separate video about stratagems and talk about that more in depth. But what I want to do in this video is just show you the stratagems I used with this crazy swarm configuration. And this was the reason why I went in this configuration, okay? So what I did is I went in and I took a couple things, all right? And I'm just gonna create the setup and then we'll talk about what's here. But there are some things that were universally good, okay? Things like Hymn of Heroes. As you get dead troops, you gain all damage. That's really good, obviously. 5% all damage is great. It's much better than this one over here, Berserker Blood. 5% all damage, but you take 3% more damage, right? It like sucks to suck, but you take that damage wherever you can get it if you're going to swarm garrisons. Far From Home gives you 12% attack when you're outside of your territory. Pack Hunters makes it so you do extra damage to things that are surrounded that have more troops than you. So this is 10% more damage over here. Beatdown is another 5%, giving us a total of 15% damage. And the final one is Rousing Drums. Whenever one of your troops receives a buff from another troop, your troop takes 15% less damage for the next 5 seconds. Each of your troops can trigger this only once every 15, but that's still an amazing effect. Enough so that I put Trajan into the mix, baby. I brought him into the mix because I was like, hey, you know what? Not only do I have the gear at this point, and we're prepping for Philip, so is what it is. But also, like, yeah, Trajan is very good if I can get 7 marches swarming a garrison. And like, Trajan might get a little wrecked, but the rest of the swarm is going to cook. And I did this all stream long. So if you want to see detailed reports, you can see them. They're all on stream, okay? So that was the configuration that I used to absolutely punish garrisons. We're talking about a grand total of, what is this, 15, 20, 25% more damage dealt, 3% more damage taken, 12% attack, and 15% damage taken reduction. I mean, bro, like that's what needed to be done. Swarm garrisons. Now, there was a way to sort of handle that, which is the setup I have over here, where you do 30% bonus counterattack, which is brutal, and you get the artifact in order to switch another troop type over, and you use like Attila as the secondary, and it's like, bro, it's GG's to the swarmers. But what shocked me in this Kingsland is that for the most part, our opponents used like Eleanor garrisons. And I will say Eleanor can be kind of scary to swarm if you're the first one in. Like I had one report where I like blinked and I was basically dead. And Eleanor gets extra activations of her active skill at instant speed. And you don't know when they're going to happen. It's based on this sort of skill over here. And so if you blink and this triggered, like actually your tanking march just died. I had one of my tanking marches just get exploded. But what are we talking about? It's the cost of Kingsland. Like obviously this was a time sensitive KvK and a time sensitive Kingsland, I should say. And so pushing for velocity was right. Even though I was trading positive mostly, it was still worth to push the pain because the progress is what you kind of needed, right? And the thing I will point out about this KvK is that honestly, this Kingsland is kind of small, right? So like if you are in the King of All Britain KvK, you need to remember this is a small Kingsland. And so you need to push momentum when and where you can because it can slip out of control pretty quickly. And like, look, I don't know if 365, they went to sleep or what, but like they weren't present enough on the field to hold back 2377. That's not controversial. It's just what happened, right? It's not a criticism. It's just what happened. And 2377 took it. Like that's it, right? It's quite literally you snooze, you lose. And it's funny when we broke through this pass, they were building forts. So it was very time sensitive, but we took out both forts. So we are just cruising into this zone. I don't know where we're headed, but probably to clear out the zone. Right? Like, obviously. Yeah, this KvK was, I think, a very fun format. If you're thinking about queuing for it, I think you totally should. And I would say that the thing you need to be extremely mindful of is what your plan is for your stratagems. Because it basically dictates your playstyle. Because, like, yeah, I could garrison without having 30% counterattack. But what are we talking about? People are still using Charles Martel in 2024 going into 2025, in part because of how insane the counterattack is. So, like, he does other stuff too, okay? Like, this 30% all damage scales in a really nice way with whatever else you're doing on your other commander, because it's a percent-based boost rather than a flat thing, like this shield. I mean, technically, it's a factor, but, you know, the size of flags and counter rallies isn't going up. But the punch of commanders is, you know what scales with the punch of commanders? A damage boost. Anyways, yeah, what else would I say about this KvK? Very, very fun. Honestly, Kingsland, surprisingly fast. I mean, you know, I've got reports. I don't know if this is a, you know, sort of valuable thing to look at. Oh, this is when I rallied the pass. Yeah, this is what I'll also say is like, because I was not in a rally garrison configuration, right? Like, I didn't do that roll, this KvK. And it's kind of tragic because, okay, I did it in the first part of the KvK, but like I spent all this currency re-rolling to like fix one stat on this from like a 1.7 to a 3.1, like 200 transmutation stones, 3, maybe 4 of the crystals that let you re-roll. I finally got it. Ugh, just insane. And then I'm not even using it really for that activity. GG, y'all. I will point out I had special swarming marches. I should show you this. I had 2 configurations, okay? And people had so many questions on stream. They were like, you benched Liu Che? What are you doing? But I had a fielding configuration and a swarming configuration. So my stratagems, you can't change them very frequently without eating a cost, and even then you can only change them so many times per 24-hour window. So I had sort of an open field set of marches, and then I had a swarming set of marches. And my swarming marches absolutely shocked people. They were like, what are you doing? And it worked, obviously. Maybe I could have done better. I would believe it, but like, when you see it, you'll be like, oh, interesting choices, Cheesy. So I used Wallace with Liu Che for general fielding. Okay, this is my general fielding. Guan with Skippy. Nevsky Joan. I used Zhuge Herman. I used Hua with William. Trajan with Ragnar. This is basically the Trajan-Skippy combo, but kind of on steroids, right? Because the Ragnar is just better than the Skippy. And then I used Ash with Shajar. And even though I didn't particularly like Shajar in the open field, and I'm finding my archers just get decimated, what I realized is that if I'm using Rousing Drums, whenever you buff a allied unit, it gains 15% damage taken reduction, that turns Shajar into a pretty powerful buffering, sort of buffing march or buffer. So I thought that was a good call. Yeah, and I think that was a good set of open field stuff. Now remember, I could have had 30% more attack in the open field. If I had an open field specialization, I could have had 10% more march speed. Bro, I could have been doing stuff. Ugh, but whatever. I disliked that aspect of stratagems where it's like, but I want to be good at all the things I like being good at. Like, you know, but you have to specialize. You don't have to, but who's going to do better at doing a specific thing? The person who specialized in it or the person who didn't? Seems straightforward to me. And so what I used for my swarming marches is Trajan with Tariq ibn Ziyad. And you might be like, what are you doing, bro? Huh? Why would you do that? So he does a bunch of damage factor. So Trajan boosts your skill damage. You hit him with big skill damage. You gain attack. You get more march speed outside of territory. You deal damage to cavalry. Fine. When you attack a city or stronghold, that's exactly what I was doing. Okay. I get 30% defense and I can debuff the target's normal damage. That's amazing. And I deal more damage. Fine. And I reduce their rage. Like, there's no infantry only requirement on this. Yeah, I'm going to swarm with Tariq ibn Ziyad, and he actually works with Trajan. From there, I used Scipio Aemilianus with Wallace. That march did great. The thing that's doing is just taking advantage of maximum single target damage and debuffing. And SA, Scipio Aemilianus, also is one of those commanders that, like, yeah, he has a little bit of stuff. When leading a rally attack, you gain 30% health. We were very worried that he'd be too squishy, but he really wasn't, because all his other stuff is amazing. Right over here, you make the target lose attack and defense, and you can silence your target when you're attacking a city or stronghold. Like, yeah, yes, that is, like, silencing the garrison is really brutal. Right? So, unless they use Attila, they didn't, mostly, weirdly. So, yeah, salt the earth. No joke, bro. And, you know, what are we talking about? 2,700 damage factor and make the target take 20% more damage. Obviously. Like, obviously value, right? I used Ragnar with Sargon. And people, this is going to blow people's minds, right? They're like, Sargon? Why would you do that? Because he's got great single target damage, and he makes the target take more skill damage, and he cares about skill damage the way Ragnar does, right? So, like, they're a good pair. I think one misconception about the way that works, though, which I may have actually fallen for, but I'm still very happy with the combo, is that you have to remember that Sargon is not doing damage over time. He is buffing himself. Therefore, it's not the same sort of damage over time additional damage factor that you're getting from Ragnar. I think I paired them originally because I was like, oh, damage over time. But that's, like, actually not it. It's just skill damage, right? It's just big skill damage together, and that works great. Very happy with that. I paired Ash with Shajar, and you may think like, wait, but you said you didn't like the Shajar when you open fielded, and I used it anyways for rousing drums. That is true for swarming the garrison also, but it was right over here. No, not this one, the next one. Whenever their troop uses an active skill while attacking a city or stronghold, the target deals 20% less normal damage for the next 3 seconds. So this is yet another way to reduce the normal damage of the garrison. This is a big deal, right? That Ash debuff is huge. That means I'm taking less counterattack. This is critical, right? So I got multiple commanders now. I got Tariq ibn Ziyad doing this. I got Ash doing this. I'm not going to advocate for Moctezuma, but if his kit was a little more relevant, maybe that will be a thing. Zhuge Liang and Herman Prime both have amazing debuffs. We run that. The Nevsky Joan, I feel, was very, very, very mediocre at swarming garrisons. But theoretically, the buff from the Joan should trigger the rousing drums. So like, all right, I guess I'll use Joan. And like, of course, I'm going to use Nevsky, right? So the final march I used was Hua with Belly, because Belly is obviously like really, really good for swarming garrisons. And, if you've made it 20 minutes into this Chisgule Gaming YouTube video, you're a real one. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And now you get the secret insight toward the end of the video, which is that the game has moved in this direction of having more focused commanders. And I think the intention was to control power creep. I think also players actually prefer power creep to commanders that release, and then they're like, but it doesn't help me. So it's kind of funny that like what players think they want is no power creep, but what they actually want is a steady flow of power creep they have access to. I think that's maybe more of like what it is. But whatever, no matter how you slice it, the latest generation of commanders were like all a part of my swarming team, right? And isn't it so obvious that like that's what they're there for, right? Like Belly Prime, obviously here to swarm stuff, right? Even Shajar, I used as a part of the swarming squad because the buff is really good. Boost your normal attack damage, boost your defense. Like, yeah, that's good. She does single target damage and she's healing as you're swarming, which is good, right? That is a good thing. I used SA and Wallace to swarm this thing, right? I don't know. I think there's a really clear role in this game for single target damage, and there's a really clear role for AoE damage. And AoE damage is best for the field. Single target damage is best for rally and swarming stuff. And there are times where a commander is so powerful that you'll use them for the other activity, even though technically that's like not what they would normally be most optimized for, right? So like Wallace is so good that like, yeah, I'll use him in the open field with Liu Cha, and like that slaps. If I was doing this again, what I think I might try is swapping in Liu Cha for Wallace. Because Wallace, I mean, every skill I think is doing super relevant stuff, if I remember correctly, but Liu Cha, I mean, he's a beast. I could have tested that. And I think his fourth skill could be super worth there. So that might be like the one sort of miss, is I like went all in on the single target stuff. I'm like, maybe I lost the plot a little bit. TBD. It's possible. Whatever. This was a fun KvK. It was a good time. And so here we are. I think that pretty much covers what there is to say about this KvK. I mean, look, we still got to clear these guys out of the zones that they're in. There may still be some skirmishing here and there, but like, it's big GG's. Big thank you to our allies. Y'all were awesome. 2377 and 2934. It's funny, people think I hold grudges, but like, I really don't. Here we are in a war camp with 2934. We beefed last KvK, and this KvK I was a titled R4 of their alliance. Like, what are we talking about? Right? Like, I don't know, man. It was a very fun KvK. It was the most hilarious plot twist for us to be in the same war camp, quite frankly. And I think we're a great fit for each other with regard to our kingdom strengths. So it was just like, it's really an amazing confluence of events. It's actually hilarious. GG's. And yeah, subscribe to find out, I don't know, what happens next, or you want to see Philip. That's why you subscribe. Because Philip is coming, gosh darn it. And I think I'm going to have to maximum my restart account because I don't know who else is loony enough to do it on day one when we don't have any fighting or any real reason. So I'll probably max fill up on my restart in like a day. Wow, it's like tomorrow. Is that tomorrow? Subscribe. You're not going to want to miss it. Live testing of Philip. I probably have to be the one to max him to make that happen. And so it'll probably be me. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.